Picture this. You know exactly when and how you'll die. What's more, you know your death is inevitable, no matter how strong or wise you are. Sounds like a horror movie plot? Well, the Norse gods lived with that knowledge every single day. They knew about Ragnarok, the day their world would plunge into chaos and they'd perish in the final battle. But here's what's truly amazing. The Vikings didn't see this as a tragedy. On the contrary, they viewed Ragnarok as a grand finale, worthy of gods and heroes. Today, we're diving into the most detailed and chilling end-of-the-world scenario in human mythology. We'll uncover why even the all-powerful Aesir couldn't escape their fate and discover what comes after the last god falls on the battlefield. The story of Ragnarok originated in the harsh lands of Scandinavia over 1,000 years ago. Ancient skalds passed this prophecy down orally until the 13th century Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson recorded it in the prose Edda. But the myth's true roots go even deeper, to the poetic Edda, a poetic collection that could be called the Vikings' ancient version of Netflix. These texts have reached us like a message from another world. Imagine, somewhere on an Icelandic farm, a monk copies down pagan prophecies about the end of the world, knowing Christianity has already won out. It's like if we today seriously pored over guides for surviving a zombie apocalypse. The word Ragnarok itself translates to fate of the gods, or twilight of the powers. And here's the first puzzle. Why did the Scandinavians believe even gods could die? In most mythologies, deities are eternal, but the northern peoples invented the idea of divine mortality. In most cases, gods are timeless. But maybe it's because when you're surrounded by 6 months of polar night, the concept of an eternal cycle of death and rebirth feels perfectly natural. The climate of Scandinavia really could have shaped the myth. Long winters where the sun barely appears, volcanic eruptions in Iceland creating a nuclear winter, all of this might have inspired the creation of Fimbulwinter. Nature itself showed them what the end of the world might look like. Ragnarok doesn't start suddenly. It creeps in gradually, like bad news scrolling through social media. The first warning is Fimbulwinter, a winter that lasts 3 straight years without a single summer. Imagine a modern person's reaction to the forecast. The next 3 years will be -30. Don't expect any sun. The Vikings understood, if nature's gone mad, then the gods have lost control too. But the cold is just the start. The real disaster is humanity's moral collapse. Brothers start fighting each other, children rebel against parents, no one keeps their word. Sound familiar? The ancient Scandinavians described what we today call a crisis of values. But they knew, when families and friendships fall apart, the world itself crumbles. Nature goes wild too. The sun and moon are devoured by the wolves Skal and Hati, who've been chasing them since the beginning of time. Stars fall from the sky. The earth shakes so hard that mountains crumble to dust. Quite a scene, huh? But for the Vikings, these weren't special effects. They were a very real weather forecast for the end of the world. The seas overflow, and that's when Jormungandr, the world serpent encircling the earth, breaks free. When it moves, oceans turn into tsunamis, and its poisonous breath pollutes the air, turning the sky black. An ecological disaster, myth style. The scariest omen is Loki's escape. The god of chaos, whom the Aesir chained to a rock for Baldur's death, finally breaks loose. And he's very, very angry. Thousands of years of torment turn the clever trickster into a revenge machine. With his freedom, the last restraints vanish. And you know what's the creepiest part? Modern scientists talk about climate changes, social upheavals, and moral crises in almost the same words as those ancient skalds. Maybe the Vikings knew more about apocalypses than we give them credit for? Let's start with the main villain, Loki. This character goes from charming rogue to absolute evil, like Anakin Skywalker but in reverse. Loki was Odin's blood brother, lived among the Aesir, helped them in tough times. But his chaotic nature gradually took over. The slaying of the bright Baldur was the final straw. For that, the gods chained him in a cave where snake venom drips on his face. Imagine this character's mindset. Thousands of years of torture for one act, however terrible. No wonder by Ragnarok, Loki becomes the embodiment of vengeance. He gathers an army of the dead and giants, becoming the commander of dark forces. A former friend turns into the worst enemy, a plot Hollywood writers still use today. Fenrir is a separate tale about how fear creates its own nightmares. This wolf is Loki's son, and the gods knew the prophecy that he'd destroy them. But instead of befriending him, they chose to trick and bind him. The only god brave enough to feed the growing beast was Tyr, the god of war. And when the wolf was lured into the trap, Fenrir bit off Tyr's hand. Revenge served cold, as they say. By Ragnarok, Fenrir grows so huge that his lower jaw touches the ground and his upper one, the sky. When he opens his maw, a river of saliva flows out. Not the most pleasant opponent for a one-on-one, and his main target is Odin, the king of gods, who once betrayed him. Jormungandr, the world serpent, embodies the cycle of time. It bites its own tail, encircling the earth like a symbol of infinity. But on Ragnarok Day, it releases its tail and the world loses its foundation. Its opponent is Thor, the god of thunder, who met it once before. Back then, Thor nearly fished the serpent out of the ocean with a hook. Imagine fishing on that scale. Hel, the goddess of death, holds a special position. She's not a villain in the usual sense, more like a neutral arbiter between life and death. Her realm is half alive, half dead, just like her. In Ragnarok, she provides an army of the dead, not out of malice, but because that's her role. Death doesn't pick sides, it just does its job. Surtur is the most mysterious figure in the pantheon. This fire giant wields a sword brighter than the sun, and in the end burns all 9 worlds. But he's not just a destroyer, he's a cleanser, preparing space for a new world. In a way, Surtur acts as the universe's cosmic janitor, clearing out the old junk. Interestingly, similar figures exist in other mythologies. Shiva, the destroyer in Hinduism, the apocalypse in Christianity, Quetzalcoatl among the Aztecs. Everywhere we find the idea that destruction is needed for renewal. It seems the human mind is wired to produce similar archetypes in any culture. The field of Vigrid becomes the arena for the final battle. Imagine a stadium the size of a continent, where instead of soccer, the fight for the universe's fate unfolds. Everyone shows up, gods, giants, elves, humans, the dead and monsters. The grandeur of this clash outshines any Hollywood action scene. The main duel is Odin versus Fenrir. The All-Father, wisest of gods, who sacrificed an eye for knowledge, faces the wolf he created through his own fears. Odin knows he'll lose. The prophecy is clear, but he goes into battle because that's a king's duty. The tragedy is that Fenrir could have been an ally if the gods hadn't chosen betrayal. Thor fights Jormungandr in a rematch from millennia ago. The god of thunder kills the serpent with his hammer Mjolnir, but perishes from the venom, managing only 9 steps after victory. It's like the final showdown in an action flick where the hero saves the world but pays with his life. Thor is the perfect Viking hero, straightforward, honest, strong, and ready to die for the right cause. Freyr, the god of fertility, once traded his magic sword for the chance to marry the giantess Gerd. Love made him vulnerable, and in Ragnarok he fights barehanded against Surtur's fiery blade. This is a story about how the noblest feelings can prove fatal. A romantic tragedy set against the end of the world. Heimdall, the god's guardian with golden teeth and superhuman hearing, meets Loki in the final duel. 2 old acquaintances who always disliked each other finally settle scores. They kill each other at the same time. Neither wants to outlive the other. A perfect end to centuries of enmity. The Einherjar, warriors who fell in battles and ended up in Valhalla, finally learn why Odin gathered them. All this time they've trained, feasted, and prepared for this one day. Ragnarok is their graduation exam, the ultimate test of strength. An army of dead heroes versus an army of living monsters. The Valkyries, warrior maidens, make their last flight over the battlefield, but now they don't need to choose worthy fallen. Soon everyone will be equal in the face of the end. Their winged steeds carry them through smoke and flame, their spears gleaming in the glow of the world fire. The final flight of mythology's most striking guides to the afterlife. What strikes you about this battle is its hopelessness for the good guys. The gods know they'll lose but fight with everything they've got. This isn't a Hollywood ending where good always wins. It's Norse philosophy. It's not the victory that matters, but how you face defeat. Honor over life, glory over success. Tactically, the gods prepared for Ragnarok for centuries. Odin collected fallen warriors, Thor trained in battles with giants, even wise Mimir offered advice for the dark day. But all these preparations weren't for winning, but for a worthy death. Pure Viking logic. If you're fated to die, die with style. The psychology of the doomed gods fascinates modern readers. They remind us of a ship captain staying on the bridge during a storm, or a firefighter entering a burning building. Knowing inevitable doom doesn't paralyze them, it frees them from fear. When the worst is already known, you can focus on what's important, how you meet the end. But here's what's surprising. Ragnarok isn't a period, it's a comma in the universe's story. Some gods survive the cosmic catastrophe. Vidar, Odin's son, kills Fenrir, avenging his father. He's called the silent god, and it seems his ability to stay quiet and observe helped him endure the chaos. Sometimes the quiet ones prove the most resilient. Vali, another of Odin's sons, also survives the disaster. This god was born specifically for revenge. He slew Hodor for Baldur's death when he was just 1 day old. Now his Avenger skills will help restore order. It's like the universe prepared an emergency response team in advance for the apocalypse. The most touching return is Baldur's, the god of light and beauty. The very Baldur whose death started the chain of events leading to Ragnarok. He comes back from the realm of the dead, symbolizing that even the heaviest losses can be mended. His resurrection isn't Christian influence, as some think. It's an ancient idea that light always overcomes darkness. Among humans, only two survive, Lif and Lifthrasir. They hide in the trunk of Yggdrasil, the world tree sustaining on morning dew. This pair becomes the Adam and Eve of the New World. Funny how the Vikings placed their ancestors not in paradise, but in a tree. For northern peoples, the forest was always home and shelter. A new earth rises from the ocean, green and fertile. There's no evil, wars, or suffering on it, an ideal world that could only be created after fully destroying the old one. The Vikings understood what modern revolutionaries often forget. To build something fundamentally new, sometimes you have to completely tear down the old. This cyclical nature is key to understanding Norse thinking. Ragnarok isn't the story's end, but a new chapter. Just as seasons change, day follows night. Worlds are born and die in an eternal cycle. Death isn't defeat, it's transformation. It's interesting to compare this with other mythologies. In Hinduism, there are kalpas, cycles of the universe's existence, each lasting billions of years. Buddhism speaks of endless rebirths. So is the idea of cyclical time a universal human intuition? Or did the ancients know something we've forgotten? Christian influence on later versions of the myth is clear too. The resurrection of Baldur, a new world without evil, all echo Christian eschatology. But importantly, the myth's core is much older than Christianity. When the new religion came to Scandinavia, old stories adapted to new ideas. The symbolism of rebirth in Ragnarok is strikingly modern. We see ideas here that today are called creative destruction in economics or forest fires in ecology. Sometimes the old must die to make way for the new. The Vikings got this long before modern development theories. Ragnarok didn't stay in ancient manuscripts. It conquered global culture. The first to export it was Richard Wagner, who in the 19th century created the opera cycle The Ring of the Nibelung. 4 operas, 15 hours of music, hundreds of characters. Wagner turned Norse mythology into a grand musical canvas. Though the German composer added Germanic nationalism and romantic love that weren't in the original. But real fame came to Ragnarok in the 20th and 21st centuries. Tolkien drew inspiration from Norse myths for The Lord of the Rings. Marvel made Thor and Loki stars of comics and blockbusters. The video game God of War lets players personally join the Norse apocalypse. The series Vikings introduced millions to Northern mythology. Why is modern pop culture so obsessed with Ragnarok? Maybe because this myth honestly addresses what many prefer to ignore. Everything ends. Empires fall. Stars burn out. Even gods are mortal. But instead of depression, the Vikings offer stoicism. If the end is inevitable, face it with dignity. Modern followers of Asatru, the revived Norse religion, still honor the ancient gods. For them, Ragnarok isn't a historical event, but a symbol of personal crises and transformations. Every person goes through their own little ends of the world. Divorce, job loss, death of loved ones. The myth teaches how to navigate these trials with honor. Psychologists find deep archetypes in Ragnarok. Carl Jung wrote about the collective unconscious and universal symbols appearing in different cultures. The end of the world, final battle, world's rebirth, these images live in the human psyche regardless of religion or nationality. We all fear the end and hope for a new beginning. And here's what's truly astonishing. Modern cosmology describes the universe's fate in terms very similar to Ragnarok. The heat death of the universe, the Big Rip, cyclical models with endless Big Bangs. 21st century physicists speak almost the same language as Norse skalds 1,000 years ago. Coincidence? Or did the ancients intuitively grasp something important about reality's nature? Ragnarok raises questions that have tormented humanity since ancient times. If the gods know their fate, why don't they change it? Odin could have slain Fenrir as a pup, but he doesn't. The Norns, goddesses of fate, weave the threads of life even for the gods. So even all-powerful beings submit to a higher law? This idea of predestination scares modern people, used to believing in free choice. But the Vikings saw liberation in it. If the outcome is fixed, you can stop worrying about results and focus on the process. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. What matters is how you play. The concept of time in Norse mythology is unusual too. Ragnarok isn't a linear end to history, but a point in an endless cycle. After it, a new world begins, where someday another Ragnarok will occur. Time moves in a spiral, not a straight line. Each generation of gods and humans lives its version of the same story. Modern ecologists find surprising parallels in the Ragnarok myth with natural cycles. Forest fires seem like disasters, but they clear soil for new growth. Volcanic eruptions destroy but create fertile land. Even an organism's death nourishes new life. Maybe the Vikings were the first ecologists understanding regeneration principles. Social revolutions follow a Ragnarok model too. The old order must be fully dismantled to make way for the new. The French Revolution, fall of the Roman Empire, collapse of the USSR. In all these events, you can see echoes of the ancient myth. History moves through crises and renewals. Individual psychology knows personal Ragnaroks too. Midlife crises, existential breakdowns, moments when your familiar worldview shatters, all are little ends of the world, after which a person can become entirely different. The myth offers guidance. Don't cling to the old, embrace destruction as part of growth. The 21st century has given Ragnarok new life in unexpected places. Climate activists use images of Fimbulwinter to describe global warming. IT experts talk about a technogenic Ragnarok, the moment artificial intelligence surpasses human. Even economists discuss a financial Ragnarok, the collapse of the modern economic system. Neurobiologists study why apocalyptic plots appeal so much to the human brain. It turns out we're evolutionarily tuned to spot threats and plan survival. Ragnarok satisfies this need in a safe way. We can play out the end of the world in our imagination without real risk of perishing. The feminist researchers highlight the role of female characters in the myth. The Norns control the fate of all gods. Hel decides who returns to life. Valkyries choose heroes. So in the Norse version of the apocalypse, key decisions are made by women. Pretty progressive for a medieval culture, don't you think? Game designers draw endless inspiration from Ragnarok. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Hellblade, Jotun, dozens of games use Norse mythology. Players get to step into the role of a god or hero fighting fate. Interactive mythology is a new way to pass down ancient stories. Even sports teams use Ragnarok symbolism. The Minnesota Vikings in the NFL, various European soccer clubs with northern names, all exploit the image of indomitable warriors ready to fight to the end. Marketing meets mythology. Why does a story about the end of the world invented over 1,000 years ago still captivate us? Maybe because Ragnarok tells the truth about the human condition. We all know we'll die. Our civilizations are mortal too. Even stars fade. But instead of despair, the myth offers wisdom. It's not how long you live that matters, but how you live. The Vikings left us an amazing message. The end isn't defeat if you face it with dignity. Every day we encounter little Ragnaroks, losses, failures, crises, and the ancient myth whispers, fight, even if you know you'll lose, especially if you know you'll lose. Because how you accept defeat is your true victory. Now a question for you. Which end of the world myths from other cultures intrigue you the most? Mesoamerican Mayan prophecies? The Christian apocalypse? Hindu cycles of destruction and creation? Share in the comments which mythological tradition to explore in the next video. After all, every people has their own version of how this world ends and a new one begins.